Hi, I'm Katie Fernholz, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. We're going to talk a little bit about sustainable forestry as a renewable material that stores carbon. So the concept I hope that you walk away from this presentation with is something that might be new to you. It might seem a little strange at first, but it's this concept that our use of the variety of forest products, the products that we use in our lives, that these products connect us to the forest and they help support sustainable management of our forest lands. Now, at first, that might sound a little counterintuitive. It even sounds like what I said is, cutting trees is good for forests, and maybe that doesn't quite sound, right to you at first, but I want you to think about it in the way we think about many of our other actions, and that concept we have of voting with our dollars, in terms of that the actions we take, the products we use, send a signal to the things that we want more of and the things that we value. And the analogy I would use is if you have apple orchards in your region and you want to support the success of those apple orchards, well, you wouldn't go out and buy oranges in order to support your apple orchards. If you want to support the apple orchards, you buy apples. And that's really what happens with our forest products. They connect us to the forest and they are a feedback loop to sustainable management. So I want to talk a little bit more about sustainability in the US and our forest resources. And this is, I think, a really helpful illustration of where we are today with sustainable forest resources in the United States. So what this chart is showing is US forest land area going back to early American history, 1600s through to the present day. And so this is showing total US forest land area over that time in the region that would become the United States, that same region that is the United States today. And what you can see is based upon our best available ecological information, it's the area that would become the United States would have supported about 1 billion acres of forest. That's our best estimate. And you can see that that total forest area was likely stable for a fair amount of time in the early American history. But then you get into this period in the 1800s, and especially after 1850 to the early 1900s, you can see that change, that decline in the US forest area. But then beginning in the 1900s, our forest area stabilized again. And our forest area has been stable to slightly increasing for about the last 100 years. And this is one of the latest charts, just to make sure you see information that goes all the way through to 2017, the last available reporting, and just looking at both of these trends. On the right-hand side, it's that total forest land area by region, north and south, Rocky Mountains, Pacific Coast, and Alaska, just again, so showing that forest land area trend has continued to be stable to increasing. And then also on the left, that our growing stock, the volume, the trees, the size, and the number of trees in the forest continues to go up as well. The last thing about sustainability, it's one of those last but not least kind of comments, is that the United States and Canada, North America, is a leader in global forest certification. But forest certification programs, they're voluntary international systems for proper forest management that ensures protections of biodiversity, and also replanting, reforestation, ensuring that after harvest occurs, that the forest is regenerated and restored. And the US and Canada represent over half of the world's certified forest areas. So now I want to shift gears. And what I want to shift gears to is talking a little bit about carbon. And when it comes to carbon benefits with forests and wood products, there are many dimensions to what the carbon benefits are, and it's really an exciting opportunity to take advantage of multiple dimensions of benefit. Because on the one hand, we have the opportunity to make sure we are sequestering carbon in the forest with the growing trees and a healthy, vibrant forest resource as a climate change mitigation strategy. We also can use forest products, wood products in our built environment and within our use in our economy as another strategy for sequestering carbon, because wood is about 50% carbon by dry weight. So we want to unpack this a little bit to understand those carbon benefits and that relationship between forest carbon and carbon in wood products. So this is a typical chart showing forest carbon, storage in the forest. And this is looking at a stand level. So a relatively small unit of forest, maybe 20 acres or a small property of forest, a stand, an individual kind of forest unit. And what you see in the forest is there's multiple places where carbon is stored in the forest. But within this forest stand, there's a periodic harvest. And so that's where you see that carbon, especially the tree carbon, decline. And then you see that residues, that line, that's recognizing that when there is a harvest that occurs, often the tops of the trees, the branches, some of those materials are left in the forest, and they contribute to additional forest carbon. But I think to put that in context, it's important to step back a little bit and look at the landscape of forest carbon. So on this top, so this slide has 3 different charts. And that chart on the top is really the same thing we were just looking at. But if we step back a little bit and we look at a forest parcel, maybe it's 100 acres or 500 acres, but a larger ownership or a larger part of the landscape, any given time, only a small part of that landscape is going to be harvested. Across that landscape, some forests are going to be regrowing, some will be mature, some will be harvested. You know, there'll be that landscape will be in different conditions, but that impact from harvesting will only be a small part of that landscape at any given time. So there's actually a much greater bank balance or savings account of forest carbon across that landscape. But that isn't the whole story. There's even more to the carbon benefit story for forests and forest products. And so this slide, again, that bottom part, the green part, is showing that same information you saw in the previous 2 slides, where it's the forest, where the trees are growing, being harvested, growing, being harvested, that cycle of forest carbon. That's what the bottom of this graph is showing. But then what this graph adds in is there's this layer of wood products carbon. So in that forest, when those products are harvested periodically, then if that wood is put into long-lived products or used in the built environment, then that carbon ends up stored. And so that's that layer of wood you see added on here. That's the products from that forest being put into long-term use. And so you have that carbon storage. And the third thing this slide is showing is if that wood is being used instead of concrete, then you can avoid all of that gray area, which represents concrete emissions. So we can store carbon in the forest. We can harvest from that forest and store carbon in wood products. And if we use those wood products instead of higher emitting materials, where appropriate, then we can avoid emissions from higher emitting materials. So with that, I thank you for your time and attention, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.